Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Campus Consortium's Ed Talks webinar series on Communication is Essential for Education. Make the most of campus telecommunications for students, faculty, and staff. If you have any questions now or during today's presentation, please type them into the chat box or question pane in the Zoom control panel. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Carl Horvath, President at Campus Consortium. Over to you, Carl.
Lily, thank you very much, and welcome to everyone who has attended today. This is the Campus Consortium Ed Talk webinar series, and we provide a monthly webinar on issues in education. And we bring the people that deal with those issues from many of the institutions across the US and outside of the US to talk with you, to share knowledge, information, experiences. And so thank you for coming today and taking the time. I know everyone's very busy. I'd like to start out by giving a shout out to everyone. My name's Carl. I'm the president of Campus Consortium, and we have a great series of panelists today, Kevin, John, and Joe, which I'll introduce as we move along. But first, we have a couple of institutions from outside of the US. We have Amir from the American University in Cairo. Thanks for joining. We also have somebody from the University of British Columbia, that's Michelle. So thank you for joining us today. And there's something for everybody that we typically present in these webinars. Other than that, we have several institutions, over 100 institutions from across the US attending. From east to west, north to south. Among those attendees are, well, I see Richard from Villanova. Thank you for attending. Again, I appreciate you attending. Richard often dials in from Villanova. We also have University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. We have Arcadia University, welcome. We also have Pepperdine University. Jim from Temple University, my buddy Jim over at Temple. Thanks for joining, Jim. We also have University of Notre Dame, Allegheny College, and Xavier University. We have some community colleges, Cayuga Community College, and several other colleges and universities. So I thank you all for attending today, and looking forward to catching up with you if you have an interest. I'd like to start by discussing Campus Consortium, which is our organization. And we're a education technology association that started in 2003. And we're here to support higher education and K-12 education in the US. We also assist other nonprofit organizations. Today's webinar is about communication is essential to education. Make the most of your telecommunications resource. And the telecommunications is one of those resources where you're almost afraid to touch it sometimes in terms of making any changes, because it's woven into the fabric of what everybody does in your campuses. And so today we're going to talk about optimizing efficiency, and that you can make changes and save money and actually provide better service. I'd like to say that if you get a chance, please visit the Campus Consortium website. We have increasing our programs and services lately, and we always have in-kind grants that are available for different services and solutions with a select number of vendors. These are the ones that are running today, this month, the month of May. And that's to help offset the costs of technology solutions for institutions. And that is part of our mission in terms of assisting institutions, is to lower the cost and provide access. We also have a few pro bono and community services for education that are no cost, which are, one is a technology assessment, another one is a telecommunication assessment that fits with today's presentation. Those are provided in partnership with Campus Consortium and Prelude Solutions, and also peer institutions, CIOs that contribute their time to the consortium for your benefit. So if you have any interest in any of these assessments, please let us know. We'll be happy to set up an engagement with you, no problem. I also like to thank today's sponsor, which is Prelude Solutions. So many thanks to Kate, Brett, and Bob, who, sponsoring this event today. They are definitely telecommunications experts, and they provide support to many institutions, as well as other industries and sectors. So they have a wide range of experience. And special thanks to our guest institutions, the University of the Arts, Harcum College, and the Franklin Institute. And yes, they're located mostly in Philadelphia this time. We often have panelists from institutions all over the US and outside of the US, but today's presentation has these three institutions, which I know well, and we have great people attending from these institutions to present to you. Today's Ed Talk is about telecommunications, as I said, and this is an interactive event. So we really do want to hear from you, the attendees, from the audience, and we would like you to participate in some poll questions as usual. It's interesting because the results of the poll questions, we get them up on the screen right away. And typically you can get a sense of where everybody else is who's attending in terms of these questions. And I'd appreciate if you could just take the next 30 seconds to answer the question, does your telecom resources meet expectations and provide a quality online and on-campus user experience for teaching, learning, and student services? And you should see a poll pane pop up on your screen. And if you could just say, yeah, well, minimally, we're getting by, but it could be better. Somewhat, we're in a good place, but we may not be able to grow with what we have right now. And then significantly, yes, we're doing great, and we have power and capability to expand into the future. So if you fit into one of those categories, generally, if you would just respond to that so we get a sense where everybody is, it would be helpful to others. And again, as I said, infrastructure sometimes is not a thing that you want to adjust too much because it could impact so many other things, especially telecommunications. So if you could take the next 30 seconds to answer that question, we'll see the results shortly. So, I'd like to just kind of give you a brief overview, as I usually do, of the topic of the day. And, typically we do a little bit of research on what's going out there in the current environment for nonprofit education, and for-profit education is also affected, but mostly nonprofit. And we derive our information from a number of different sources. So, typically this is affecting all of us. So it doesn't matter what sector we're in, whether it's education, for-profits, our everyday existence. We live in a digital society and everybody depends on technology. And of course, I'm sure everybody's heard enough about it, but that COVID-19 pandemic really forced many of us to an online environment, whether it was school or it was at work or our socializing that we typically would do outside of our homes, we had to do inside of our homes. I'm just going to pause there for one moment and share the results of our current poll. So thank you for participating. Does your telecom resources meet expectations and provide the quality online and on-campus experience? Minimally, so about a quarter of the folks, institutions here, they could stand to do some work on their telecom resources. About 38% say, yeah, we're doing pretty good, but we could do a little bit better with some efficiency and improvements to our telecom or upgrades. And then about 38%, which is a good number, significantly, yes, we have power and capability and systems and training. So everybody's mostly in good shape. Telecom is a project that you're never done working on. So you're always upgrading and improving. And it's a lot, especially if you're a nonprofit institution, and you really have to prioritize your funds and your resources carefully. So thank you for those responses, and we'll get back to the introduction. So because of, here, the bolded areas of this comment demonstrated critical importance, telecom infrastructure, and keeping business, governments, and societies connected and running. Everybody depends on telecommunications today, but technology too. I mean, can you imagine many of you doing your work today not using a computer to do that? And that wasn't so long ago when people didn't really depend on computers and technology to get their jobs done. But today, people rely on technology for information, and in terms of everything they do, social, work. It's critical. And in terms of safety for the pandemic, it was also critical. Just a few items here from research and the news. You can see a few of these taglines that say, experts say the new normal in 2025 will be far more tech-driven. The new normal is tech-driven work practices. COVID-19 puts companies over the technology tipping point. They have to invest. Higher ed must go all in on digital. It's time to invest in tech equity and education, and why universities need to invest in technology. So we will be sharing out this PowerPoint, and all the references to these articles are in the PowerPoint. So you'll be happy to, we'll be happy to share that with you, and you can follow up and read these articles yourself if you have interest. But what this slide is saying is that we're depending on it, and it's not reversing back to the way we were. It's certainly growing. Not everybody can access, and this is another issue that we don't often talk about as much, but we really should. It's that not everybody can access, communicate, or learn using technology. And if we take a quick look at the world in terms of the top 10 countries with the worst telecom, we see that there's a lot of African and Asian countries, one North American country. The top 10 best countries are in Europe and Asia, and looks like South America there. So, there is a disparity between the use and availability of telecom and telecom infrastructure and the services they all provide. And then the top 10 countries with no internet or almost no internet, as you can see, are basically in the African and Oceanic continents. And, they struggle mightily with trying to communicate and interact with the rest of the world. So there certainly is a disparity in equity globally in terms of telecommunications. We all take it for granted if we live near a big city or in a big city that we have access to technology, but not everybody does. And if we look at the top US cities with poor telecommunications, even in the US, we see people that don't have access to good telecommunications resources. Texas, Ohio, Florida, even California, Louisiana, and Illinois, definitely need areas that to be upgraded so they can use some of these services. And there is information here from the digitalinclusion.org, which is a great website resource and a great organization. I've joined that, really get a lot of information back and forth from them in terms of what equity work is being done across the world and within the US. And as we can see, there are pockets of households. These are households with no telecom. 59% of the households in far Texas do not have access. And you can see the list: Texas and some in California, Indiana, Louisiana. So, according to the data from the US Census Bureau, well, this is from 2019, 30% of households in large and medium-sized US cities still lack wireless and broadband connections. What are the causes of these things? Poverty, illiteracy, linguistic exclusion, lack of relevant content. Of course, cybersecurity, IT security is huge. That's a major concern of many IT leaders today. And how do they afford it and maintain it, and in the environments that they're responsible for? So who's helping to bridge this gap? And there is a number of organizations that are working on this every day, both internationally and nationally here in the US. We have, of course, the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, which I showed you a few slides from their website. The Pew Research Center is working on it. There's some organizations that are dedicated totally to this, ensuring equity, and that is Everyone On. And there's Partner Bridging the Digital Divide Gap. U.S. government is also working to provide equity, and that's, of course, the Federal Communications Commission and the Affordable Connectivity Program, which is associated with the FCC. And also, we have USAID from the American people. This is international support in the world, not just for the US. So education specifically, educational institutions depend on telecommunications. So yeah, teaching and learning, student services, and it really changes how we communicate and teach students and how they learn, by having a good telecommunications infrastructure and services, especially since the pandemic is critically important for institutions today. And why is telecommunications important? So aside from the pandemic, it really does promote collaboration, cooperative learning. It's inclusive of some students that don't do well in on-campus or in-person environments. It really brings them in. And as we look at newer generations of students that are attending educational institutions, we can see that they come from environments where they are heavily dependent on technology. So it's good for educational institutions to really, understand the impacts on how they deliver teaching, learning, and student services. It really does provide easy access and enhances and empowers faculty to be able to provide more information and information in more significantly impactful ways to their students. And there is telecommunications support for education out there. We have a number of bipartisan infrastructure bills in the government currently being processed, and hopefully that will benefit educational institutions when they're done with that process. Of course, the digital inclusion associations, I showed you one, but there are several that are championing the cause. Research and education networks. Many states in the U.S. have an R&E network. For example, here in Pennsylvania, we have one called KIMBER, the Keystone Initiative for Network-Based Education and Research. But New York has NYSERNet. We have so many of these associations across the U.S., and these are technology infrastructures and services that are designed and built for education. So it may be a good idea to investigate some of those if you need telecom infrastructure, because they do cater to the nonprofit sector. Of course, there's E-rate programs, the Universal Service Fund with the government. Department of Labor provides some training and information. And of course, many companies and organizations are behind the corporate social responsibility programs. So what can you do as an educational institution to manage telecom? Well, first analyze your environment. How are you using it? We don't often think of it. We just think it exists, telecom, whether it's telephone or internet service or other medium that is leveraging telecom. We don't often think of it, but I encourage everyone, not just the IT department in your institutions, to think about telecommunications, because it can really change your programs and your services by making simple adjustments sometimes. And, think about the future, because we certainly are moving to a future of a digital society. And so how will that impact your programs and services to your students? But what can be done now? And that's somewhat of what we're going to talk about today with our panelists. What can you do to immediately address these issues, find savings, find efficiency, and really expand your services and support without really making a lot of investments. We know that technology can be money hungry investment sometimes. And so today we'll talk about some ways that we want to not spend that money, but still we want to expand and improve our networks. I just want to pause there for a moment and provide the next poll question, please. Participate, everyone. You get about 30 seconds. Are telecom costs and services supporting the needs of faculty, students, faculty, and staff? No. Online and digital services don't meet the community expectations. Somewhat, could be better, but telecom is expensive and it's hard to change. And yes, we monitor our telecom infrastructure for efficiency and cost effectiveness. And that really is what it comes down to. You have to attend to it. But when you have so many priorities as an education institution and limited resources, both financially and in expertise, it's hard to monitor and optimize your telecom infrastructure. So the poll is on the screen right now. So please take the next 30 seconds and give us some feedback on that in regard to your own institutions. And we'll take a look at the results in just a few moments. I would like to introduce our first speaker to address some of the challenges that he's been dealing with at his institution and some of the solutions that he's found. And this is Kevin Brennan. He is the Director of Infrastructure Services at the University of Arts in Philadelphia. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about Kevin. Kevin is a strategic thinking and results-oriented information technology professional who excels at aligning technology with business drivers and objectives in higher education environments. For over 30 years of experience managing design and maintenance of network infrastructures in a Fortune 500 enterprise and in the world's third largest equity options trading market. He is well skilled in collaboration, networking, project management, budget preparation and control, and staff development. Kevin is a motivated and respected team leader who enthusiastically takes on technology challenges and continues to accept increasing responsibility and senior management positions. Kevin, sounds like you have a lot on your plate there, and I'm sure with telecom emphasis, especially since 2020, that your job's just got more challenging, and I'd love to hear a little bit about how you're dealing with it at the University of the Arts. But before I hand it over to you, Kevin, I'd like to share the results of our latest poll, our telecom costs and services supporting the needs of students, faculty, and staff. And 9%, which is, a lesser portion of our audience, which is great, say no, we need to do some work on that. About 42% saying, oh, we're okay, but I'm not sure we're going to be able to meet the needs of the future. And then yes, 48%, almost half, say, yeah, we're in good shape. And I know a number of institutions that have really invested in their telecom infrastructure because they realize this is going to be the future, and it's going to affect everything, all their programs and all their services. So this is great feedback. So thank you for this. And it really kind of shows kind of a half and half division among people who, institutions that really need to invest in probably doing some more to optimize their telecom infrastructure. And then the other half that are, they've already adopted some good practices, or they've been fortunate enough to have the investments and expertise to move ahead. So I appreciate everybody participating in that poll. And right now I'd like to hand it over to Kevin Brennan. Kevin, please talk to us about University of the Arts and what you're doing there.
Okay, hearing some of the participants in this webinar, I'm a little intimidated by some of the size of the universities, and I don't imagine they experience the issues that I do. We're a very small university, and we don't have a whole lot of an endowment. Money is tight. We're enrollment based. So one of the main things, obviously, I struggle with is the ongoing budget constraints. So obviously, for various reasons, we've had declining enrollment, and then throw COVID on top of that, and our budgets have been cut drastically. We've had no capital expenditure budget since 2018, and we have a fairly large network for a small university. The network infrastructure sitting at the edge, which is where everybody connects, that's been in place since 2010. And every year we try to get the money, capital expenditure, or we look at some way to finagle it into OpEx, and it hasn't worked. So we kind of, our operating mode is you come to work every day and you hope that something doesn't break, because we're relying on spares. The equipment is out of support from the vendor. The options are minimal for us. We just submitted the budget for this year, and there's no budget in sight to replace that equipment. So it's not optimal. We're looking at alternative solutions, like we're looking at a company that does network as a service as an option. So we're starting to look at that. But one of the things that we've done, and I have to give a plug to Prelude Solutions, because they've come in, we've done several engagements with us, and they have helped us cut costs and reduce services, time spent with vendors and other carriers that you just don't have time to spend during the day. And Prelude has come in and done that, and they've saved us significant money, and they've reduced costs, and they've removed unused services for us. So that's one of the things we're always do, is looking to see where we can cut costs and possibly backfill the budget to get our hardware upgrades. But it's been a struggle. These are, none of these topics that I'm talking about are probably new to some universities. Money is definitely key, and it's a struggle for us to get it. So almost along the same line is the difficulty in attracting and retaining highly skilled staff. I started out with 6 FTEs in my department, and now I'm down to 2. We lost an assistant sysadmin in 2018. He was specialized in what he did in support of Mac systems. We interviewed multiple people who didn't have the skill sets that he had, and the job ended up being cut as part of another budget initiative. So there's a body down. We lost a sysadmin in 2019 who was going off to a different university, but she was responsible for Windows and Linux administration. I was fortunate that I poached. There was a guy on campus who was the printer administrator, but he had a really deep skill set into Windows and Linux, and I was able to poach him. So that was a stroke of luck, because I don't know, what that position would be today. I lost my assistant director of infrastructure and security in 2021. The position isn't posted yet, and we're paying consultants to do this guy's work. So that makes it more difficult. We're not permitted to use staffing firms. The university doesn't want to pay the money for that. So everything goes through HR. Jobs are posted that way. And I've had people apply for sysadmin jobs who work at the Gap, just things, people that are just really not candidates. And I don't know about the rest of the audience, but our salary ranges are significantly lower than enterprises and larger universities pay. So that makes it hard to draw in qualified candidates. And it doesn't provide a financial incentive for the existing staff to stay if they get a better offer. And, other people, the staff is getting offers because the ones I have left are pretty talented, and the ones that have left were very talented. So we couldn't compete with that. So that's been a difficulty we've had ongoing. And the last and always glaring piece is the network and data security. We've been using a vCISO to assist us with our security compliance requirements. What I'm seeing with security is that you need hands to work on whether you buy a solution or an outside service comes in and gives you a solution. It still takes hands, which requires more FTEs, which I'm not getting. And I mean, we've built some policies around security, and people have a better idea of what the action steps are in case we do have an incident. So that's a plus, but we're continuing to look at outside services because I think it's going to be difficult to find somebody skilled enough to take on the whole network and security responsibility. So we're looking at outside services, but again, what some of the services offer you is something that requires hands-on in your organization, and that again, it just points back to my points 1 and 2 of the budget and the difficulty in attracting people. So that's basically my tales of woe from a small university standpoint. And I can return this back to Carl.
Kevin, thank you for that. And, your story is not an unusual story. And, in this organization, I'm able to talk to colleges and universities all across the country. The pandemic especially has exacerbated an already major issue for educational institutions, and that is funding that you've identified, as well as expertise. And now, many businesses are impacted because they can't hire anybody, and not even retail. When you go somewhere, the hours are adjusted. There's very minimal staffing. And imagine you, Kevin, as I hear you're trying to hire like a sysadmin at a lower salary, so in the past, where this may have been attractive for a very competent candidate who wanted to get into the big selling point was always the educational environment, right? So we're collaborative and communicative, and it's a nice environment to work in. But today, it's very difficult. So I appreciate what you're saying, and have heard this from many IT leaders recently. And so what we're here today to talk about is a little bit about what you identified as a solution, and that is to start working with the vendors or consultants, or maybe the day of having in-house staff needs to be a hybrid model, just like we're doing with teaching in terms of IT services, is to have a combination of in-house support and managed services of some sort. So whether it's a consultant for telecom, as you said, what and I feel for you, because I've been in that situation as a CIO myself, where you have to vet multiple vendors to get down to identify a vendor that you want to bring on. There's a whole list of criteria. I mean, you're creating your own spreadsheets, contrasting, comparing. So it's not easy. So I appreciate you identifying that, kind of working with, an organization like Prelude or perhaps some other managed service is probably the way to go. So what's the pathway to that? We try to help people find that. And I did want to kind of comment on Mark Worrell from UPenn, and he's absolutely right. I did not recognize here in Pennsylvania two other nonprofit organizations. One is called Magpie, and the other Three Rocks. And he's absolutely right. Should have identified that when I talked about the PA Research and Education Networks. These other two organizations are amazing at providing telecommunication services and supporting their communities and all the communities in PA. And every state has something like that. So it's important to, as an institution, maybe research them. Mark, thank you for bringing that to my attention. You're absolutely right. There are multiple organizations that are, really trying to provide some good telecom support in PA. So thanks, Kevin. That was a good perspective and one that you're not alone in. I don't believe so.
Yeah, I'm seeing the chats, and
Yeah.
it doesn't make me feel good. It just makes me feel like there's people kind of suffering the same pains that,
Yes.
you know.
Yes. Well, I hear that all the time with all the people I talk to every week. And it's like, how can we work together to brainstorm to, can we share some resources or ideas or projects? That's what Campus Consortium is about. It's trying to make those connections. That's how I used it when I was a CIO. I talked to other schools. They did things that I couldn't do, or I'd stick a data, a server in, there was a community college near me, Montgomery County Community College. They were very great with me putting a server there for disaster recovery in their data center. And, it's this collaboration and communication, what education's built on. And we have to work together for this, because the dependency on technology, as I said in the beginning notes there, is just growing and growing. But I have another question here from another school, and this is Thomas Kemp. And Tom is saying, what LMS are you using? I think, Tom, you're asking Kevin. So Kevin, what LMS are you using? Learning management system.
Canvas.
Canvas. Yeah. A lot of people are using Canvas. It's hosted by Instructure these days. So it's been a good way to go. I remember back in the old days, we used to host all our servers for LMS, and that was quite a bit of maintenance. We also have another question from, let's see, Stephen Belker. I work for a larger university, 30K students, and we have issues retaining talent. It's a common problem in public education. It really is. And it's just education all over. I've been hearing about this. And some great people are leaving because, the inflation, the economy. So how can we in education who are committed to education make it work? And that's where we come together on these webinars to find solutions. So thanks for that, Kevin. Next poll question. Does your institution's strategic plan include attention to telecom skills, expertise, and infrastructure to serve the students of the future? And so this is about forward-looking. The impact of a digital society will definitely continue to increase. And so how can you prepare your institution for that? It really requires thinking out of the box and, some type of innovation that maybe you aren't doing now. So if you could take the next 30 seconds, audience, and please answer that question. We'll see the results in just a moment. And while you're doing that, I'd like to introduce our next presenter. His name is John Sipley, and he's an innovative senior business and technology leader with multi-industry experience from startups through mid-sized companies, focusing on maximizing the value of information technology and delivering against business objectives and budgets. He's a change leader, adept at evaluating and implementing the appropriate technology, collaborating across business lines and functions, and creating an IT strategy enabling growth and profitability. His proven expertise Developing and mentoring matrixed high-performance teams cultivate strong business partnerships and leverages technology to anticipate and solve business challenges. John has a demonstrated track record of simplifying business processes and consolidating systems, reducing complexity and minimizing operating costs. With a successful history of accomplishing aggressive goals and creating service-oriented cultures, John is a trusted leader who delivers on commitments. John is served as CIO at Harcum College, and I'd like to hand it over to John to kind of talk about your experience a little bit and address the situation that we're facing today with telecom. But before I do that, John, love to just review our final poll question here and the feedback from it. It looks like, does your institution's strategic plan include attention to telecom skills, expertise, and infrastructure to serve the students of the future? Not really. About 10% or so, a little over 10% say, now we need to attend to that. And so we need to get back. And this is where the leadership, the executive leadership really needs to maybe try to adopt this technology, and telecommunications is a very critical part of the strategic plan, because in the future, you know, even now everyone's depending on it. It'll just increase in importance. And then 48% say somewhat technology can make a difference by using it in flex and hybrid environments. And so I think a lot of folks have gone that way since the pandemic, especially to try to work out a nice balance between on campus and online, but certainly enhancing their online offerings, because that need may grow again as it did during the time of the pandemic. And then finally, 41% say, yeah, we're in pretty decent shape. Digital culture is a game changer for education. We're thinking about it now, and that's encouraging to hear. And again, this all goes back to that thought leadership and how are we adopting these ideas in our operations and priorities for each of our institutions. So I really thank the attendees for taking the time to answer that poll. And John, I'm going to hand it over to you, as I know you have a few very interesting things to talk about.
Thank you, Carl. Yes, I wanted to talk about a few things that we're seeing in the way technology has affected higher ed in the last few years in a major way. I mean, first, when we start with SaaS solutions, you know, go back a few years and we were hosting everything, you know, ourselves on campus, which made a few things a little bit easier. We didn't have to worry about broadband connectivity. You know, do we have a redundancy in it, redundant firewalls, et cetera, as well as you didn't necessarily have students connecting in from the outside of campus all the time. But now, you know, student information systems, learning management systems, and student success systems, majority of them are SaaS solutions, and we've all moved to that, reducing, you know, our budget of maintaining these servers ourselves, because obviously, you know, a lot of us, you know, I like Kevin, have budget constraints. We have a number of them, and have had to live through this. So in dealing with that, you know, the thing we look at is the importance of student connectivity. And it's not just we're finding on campus, you know, we've got the dorms and the classrooms, but also off campus. And where do they get it off campus? Some get it at home. We found we had a large number of students that actually didn't have good broadband at home. So they, you know, were going down to local libraries, or they were going down to a coffee shop. A couple found McDonald's that had Wi-Fi they could use. So we're looking at all these different things. And the reason a lot of this has changed, I mean, most of us have moved to hybrid classrooms, where we have students, even now that we're back in class, we still have students that are at home. They don't want to come back to the dorms for whatever reason, or they don't want to, you know, commute into campus. So we're providing things in multiple different ways nowadays. You know, it's not the old brick and mortar, everybody comes to class, you learn, you go. And then we had a full separate system that maintained our online courses. Now everything's being blended together. So what we're even finding is even students that do come back, a lot of them want to sit in their dorm and attend class from there. They don't want to actually go to class. So it really becomes a lot more important of how the students look at this. Because if you really look at our current generation of students coming out of high school, to them, mobile technology is what we call it. They call it a cell phone. Their phone is a, you know, is a small computer. They don't look at it that way. That's their phone. and all the interactivity to it has nothing to do with the computer in their mind. It's my little phone. I carry my phone. I have that. So in looking at that, it really becomes more important as to what we're doing. Or do we have the correct broadband to, interact with these students, to broadcast from a classroom out to our LMS or through Zoom, wherever, and then have it come back down to, wherever they're at. Are they at home, or are they in the dorm room? Or are they doing it on their phone? Because really, if you look at it, all of our current SaaS solutions, information systems, learning management systems, and success platforms, they all have phone apps. So you can very easily get everything you need to do right on your phone. And that's the way students are looking at it nowadays. The high school kids now, and the ones coming out in the next few years, they've never lived without it. I've got a neighbor who's 3-year-old, very adept at using her tablet already. I'm amazed what she can do at 3. So that's what we're seeing. And technology that way is just becoming more and more embedded into what we have to do. And that's where we really have to start watching with what we're doing. So then it comes into, how do we handle this? You got multiple vendors and contracts for telecommunications and student interactions. In years past, I'd say go back 10, 15 years, you paid attention to it, but probably not as much as you have to now. But with these, vendors, you probably have a mobile phone vendor. You may have a video conferencing vendor, SMX texting, depending on what you're doing with your different platforms. That could be a separate thing. Email, if you're using a Google Enterprise or Microsoft Office 365, you're there. Then you have your hybrid classrooms that you're dealing with, what you're broadcasting across there. And then we found, there's other tools. Our maintenance department has their own apps that are on the system. The student can just grab on their phone and say, hey, I need something in my dorm room. A dining hall, you can order stuff on an app there, as well as your textbooks. All that's coming out of your apps. So with that, you've got all this different technology that's in the background that to the student, they're not looking at it as separate pieces of technology. They look at it as one thing. This is basically what I get on my phone. So when we're dealing with this, we have to start pulling all these together. So that's where we come into the contracts with different vendors. You got mobile vendors, you got your voice over IP, sometimes you still have copper, you have broadband, you can have a hosted voice over IP, or just standard on-premise PBX with PRIs. So how can we still have that? We'd like to get rid of it, but budget doesn't allow us to get rid of it right now. So that's one of the problems. But then when you're also looking at this, the previous university I was at, we found as we had somebody come in and assist us with doing one of these audits, that all of our fire alarm systems, due to the local regulations, had to have copper lines to every single building. So that's something else you threw in, and that wasn't on the normal contract. So for some reason, they pulled that off of a separate contract. Elevators also have that sometimes, where they won't allow you to use voice over IP, or if you do, you also have to go with a copper line. And what we found, as everybody knows, trying to find these contracts, when I came into both of the higher education facility, places I've worked at, I came into places where contracts were already there, and IT for some reason didn't have copies of a lot of them. So trying to track stuff down was interesting through our accounting departments, as well as in, like I say, I found that other departments actually had some of their own contracts. Maintenance had contracts for some of the alarm systems. Security had contracts for others. The elevators were under part of accounting for some reason. And as you try to track all these contracts down, it takes a lot of time, as well as just reading them. So that's where we found a third-party vendor can be advantageous to you. Now, we worked briefly with Prelude Solutions only because what I found, and this is one of the problems with some of these contracts, is people don't read them. And whoever signed the one that we were into signed a 5-year contract. And the out clause was basically non-existent. So one of the things you have to look for when you're looking at all these different contracts, and normally, most people tend to sign a 3-year, but they're available 1, 2, 3, and 5 years, which I've usually seen. But one of the things you gotta watch out for is there's auto renewal clauses in these contracts. Some of them are 60 days, 90 days. Others, you may have to tell them 120 days ahead of the renewal date that you want to, get out of the contract. Some will go month to month. Some actually renew for full term. So you're running into a lot of problems with that. And you have to watch out what's going on with that. And people, for some reason, just kind of ignore that when you're signing it. The other thing that you can do is, as you read through these contracts, they're all negotiable. Even as small as the schools I've worked with are, we've been able to negotiate certain things out of the contract. Like the auto renewal for 3 years. Now we got them to negotiate down. No, renew month to month. That way, if you are in the market to change and something happens and you aren't able to get it out and make that change fast enough to meet the end of your contract, you can just go month to month. A lot of times you may have to take a 60-day cancellation on it, so you may eat 2 months of costs, but you're not renewed and locked in for another 2-3 years, whatever the full contract was. So when you go through these, just about all of them are negotiable. And when you want to start looking at these or bring in a third party like Prelude, and the reason for it, which really comes in handy, is that they can go through and look at your PBX maintenance agreements, because the one we have is very costly. We'd like to get out of it, but truthfully, the major cost is to replace all the phones across campus right now, and they're trying to figure out what we can eliminate. Once we determine if we can eliminate most of the phones, since everybody has a cell phone nowadays, that'd be great. But until then, you need to bring in somebody that, and this is just really bandwidth, like Kevin was talking about. We don't have enough staff to dedicate someone to go through and spend the time to find all these contracts, get a hold of all the different telecommunication vendors that we use, verify that we have everything. My previous higher university, when we had somebody come in, we were looking at it, and that's how we found out all the alarm systems. Someone else went out and found it for us. And as they were doing the review for us, we also found that we had 400 phone numbers that we were still paying for from back when they put a phone in every dorm room. Nobody realized it was there, and they had been paying it for probably 3 or 4 years at least on a monthly basis for something that they no longer used. So bringing in a third party really helps you to take a look at all these different things, and what they can do is then put everything together for you and see if there's a way that you can tie your mobile phone into your broadband, into your general telecommunications, or what kind of hosted voice over IP system you want to do, where you don't have to worry about keeping it on site. Again, what you're doing is eliminating that need for an employee who's highly trained in it. A lot of the systems that are hosted by different companies, they're very easy to use. An administrative assistant can normally take care of a lot of this. So that's what we're looking at. And when we do it, like I say, a third party is great to have come in and do this. They're very used to the contracts. You can tell them what you're looking at, what you're worried about in the contract, but they'll generally find it and point it out to you. And when they come back, they almost always come back with some different vendors that you can use. That way you can see what kind of pricing you can get, and what kind of combinations you can get. Now, in selecting one of these, you want to make sure the third party's been around a few years. They don't have to be too old, because a lot of this is fairly new. But you also want to see how you pay them. There are a few that want money up front. I tend not to deal with them. I really like to deal with someone who's going to say, I will take a percentage of what I save you. So let's put something into the mix for them, because if they're not going to save you money, they're not going to make any money. Rather than, I pay somebody $5,000-$6,000 to review all my contracts and tell me where I'm at. I don't want to do that. I want somebody to save me money, because that's really what we're looking for, is a way to cut our budgets. So somebody like Prelude, they'll come in, and that's actually what they work on. They don't make a dime until they save you some money, and then they take a percentage of that. Now, along with that, the other thing you have to look at with the way different companies do it is, how long do they take that percentage? Is it 1 year, or do you sign like a 4-year contract or 5-year contract with them, and they just take that same, once they get that percentage down, they take that at, every month? Where's it come from? So that's another thing you have to look with that. How you're compensating them. So as you get through all that, you can find a third-party vendors very, very helpful in this. Like you say, we weren't able to fully utilize Prelude because we were locked into a 5-year contract with a local vendor with 100% buyout. I was able to renegotiate the contract where we got, more bandwidth for less money. And it also went over and we cut all of our costs on our phone lines. They were actually traditional PRI lines, but we were able to cut all that. Of course, we had to lengthen the contract by another year and a half, but the savings made it worthwhile. Now, as soon as
John,
yeah,
it sounds like that, that really helps outside. It's so often in education, we try to do things ourselves to save money, but with just a little bit of support, we need to start looking at who can support us. Sounds like you were able to do that. And I'd love to connect anybody who's interested with you to get, definitely more details on that. But I'm sorry to interrupt you right now. We need to move on. We're running a little bit short on time. And great information though. And I think we should follow up with another presentation that dive into those details that you were talking about. But right now I'd like to just take the opportunity to present our last presenter, who comes from a little bit different perspective, but basically the same, education background, and that's Joe Chiori. And Joe is the director of IT at the Franklin Institute. And the Franklin Institute is all about education too. It's nonprofit education, but it's more along the lines, and forgive me, Joe, for saying this, maybe like a museum, but I'll let you correct me after I'm done. But let me just give you a quick intro. Joe is an accomplished leader and mentor with over 20 years of experience serving nonprofit institutions. His history of achievements in large enterprise technology design, implementations, and operation support is underscored by his ability to affordably innovate by drawing from a combination of technical expertise, project management proficiency, and engaging interpersonal skills. He is highly skilled in enterprise architecture, customer relationship management, IT service management, IT strategy, and data management. Joe is a seasoned technology thought leader with 2 engineering-focused BS degrees from Drexel University. And Joe, thank you so much for joining us today. Please take it away and tell us about the Franklin Institute and what you've been able to do.
Thank you very much. And I realize we're running out of time, so I'll try and shorten this up a little bit. But, it's very interesting getting to go last. I get to react to some of the things that I've been hearing. And, Kevin and John laid out some problems and actually, made me realize that we all live in bubbles. And here I was thinking that, large universities or small universities don't have the problems that we have seen. Traditionally being my experience tends to be in nonprofits, K through 12, and more importantly, charities, right? And so when you look at very small charities, a budget is always extremely challenging. But to hear the resource issues that everybody's been speaking about is extremely timely too. The Institute is amazing, but most people probably don't realize it was completely shut down for almost a year, and that destroyed the entire revenue stream, and we lost an enormous amount of talent. So I can completely identify with the challenges of bringing talent in. More importantly, the biggest problem with talent is getting it, cultivating it. And of course, it's a very hot market right now. It's very difficult to get good people. And then the idea is being able to hold on to them and retain them. And so I can completely empathize with what everybody's going through. But I wanted quickly to talk about some of the things that I had come across. And I too am a big fan of services like Prelude. In the K-12 world, E-rate was a very big thing that brought telecom to the forefront, and it brought services to schools that weren't necessarily available. And then E-rate evolved over many, many years, and it went from simple voice, assisting with voice technologies to ultimately broadband and Wi-Fi. And then it moved into this category 2 space where you started talking about complete packages. And that could be full services. And we found that it created a bit of a vacuum because it now made the voice technologies ever more important and the broadband technologies. And we gained a very quick we realized very quickly that services that were outside of our expertise were going to be required to make sure we were optimizing everything we were doing and setting us up for the future. And we didn't have that talent in-house. So bringing in folks like a Prelude, for instance, they can help you because they're experts at what they do. And they can come in and say, we see what you're doing. We see where you're saving, you can save some money over here, but more importantly, they can set you up to succeed and have a path forward. To the point where it kind of goes to my second bullet, we decided that that was something that we needed to do on an ongoing basis. It wasn't enough just to do that once. We quickly realized that, again, John was talking about contracts, right? And so those contracts come up anywhere from, whatever you said, the renewal periods are, typically it was 3 years for us, but every 3 years we wanted to reevaluate, were we in the right place? Where are we moving forward the right way? And because if you get it wrong, it can really set you back. And again, a nonprofit charity, for instance, really can't afford those setbacks. And we found, these types of solutions were extremely helpful. I would say too, in the beginning of the presentation, Carl, you were talking about COVID. Obviously, COVID affected all of us. We are all challenged with moving everybody remote. And again, I'm living in my bubble, thinking about my little world of the nonprofit small schools. And we were, I worked in the Camden area for quite some time. And, low income areas were very heavily impacted. John spoke to this a little bit about, students going to coffee shops and, and trying to, latch on the Wi-Fi. When we quickly mobilized plans and found ways to get hardware into the hands of students and teachers and administrators, but then ran into the problem of people that literally did not have internet connectivity in their homes. And this wasn't just students, it was teachers, it was administrative people, and those were big challenges to work through. Now I will say one thing that charities are really good at, whether we don't have all this technical expertise in-house, but we do have grant writers. And, once we're able to identify opportunities and grants that we could apply for, we were able to, get those types of things in motion. But there was something that we had to bridge. We had to get ourselves to a point where we are able to get those types of grant submittals moving. And again, there are organizations much like the Consortium that put resources in the hands of these small organizations so that they can benefit from outside expertise. So I can't agree more with my colleagues. Outside services are an enormous resource. And quite honestly, I don't think I would be successful without having those abilities and being able to reach out in ways that we have. So I see we're a little bit over. I don't want to drone on. I will be more than happy to have anybody reach out to me. My contact information is available upon request. I'll be more than happy to have a conversation outside of this. But thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, Joe, that was very interesting, and I have to say thank you for giving the perspective. I mean, we all deal with common challenges. We just have different, types of institutions, and so it doesn't matter whether you're large or small, or you're an organization that's not exactly like a college or university. We're all dealing with these same issues with resources and expertise and finances, of course. So I want to thank our panel today. Everyone provided some great insight and input from their perspectives. We'll do a little bit more research on this and publish executive brief for anybody who would be interested in, getting that. So we'll have a little bit more insight in there. We also want to thank our sponsor, Prelude. who sponsored this presentation to give us insight. They also partner with us, as I said, on some of these free services that we provide institutions. Just let us know, contact us. If you qualify, you certainly can have access to those free services. And it helps you prioritize what you're going to work on, gives you some good recommendations. And again, expertise is one thing that definitely is can be expensive, but through the Campus Consortium, we're trying to make that affordable for education. We'll send this deck out to everybody. There's certainly quite a few references we have from the work we did today and the discussions we had. I want to thank the attendees. A lot of feedback from George Mason University. Thank you for those comments, Tom, and and Mark, and others, and our panelists, Joe, Kevin, and John. Great job. Love to hear more about your experiences, and we'll follow up with a different presentation and documentation about this topic to try to help our member institutions and anybody in the education space. We help everyone. So thank you, everybody, for attending today. I hope you have a great rest of the day. And until next month, we'll see you next time. Take care.